Dude, that cyclone, that hurricane is going to hit the shit out of Florida, where my buddy's at.
And man, you better hope they got a bathtub and a mattress.
Yeah.
Noodles, alcohol, and candles. It's
Well, that's day night, isn't it?
How close to the coast are they? Like, when I say close, I'm talking like in terms of meters.
Yeah, no, they're inland.
Because it's often not the wind so much of the problem, it's the storm surge, which is what does a lot of the damage. I mean, that's not to say that wind can't fuck shit up, but that you can generally prepare enough to prevent wind causing death.
No, they're inland, so they'll be all right from that perspective. But it's going to be quite high wind speed. It's interesting because it was Category 5 when it was hitting landfall in the islands, and Category 5 was watching.
Which islands?
Well,
where is it coming from? Because Florida's southeast.
Florida's southeast, so it first it
comes the Gulf.
Yeah, the Gulf Islands, it hits them first, and then it drives its way up to Florida. And then what happens is, as it hits the islands themselves slow it down a little bit. So when it was first hitting the islands, it was like Category 5, which is like 100. They were saying 175 to 185 miles an hour winds.
What's that in real metrics?
Well, I mean, it's
it's a bit close to 350 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, like crazy. Yeah,
big. It's as big as they've got in recent.
It's just, if you think about it, it's crazy speed. I mean, if anything is picked up by the wind and is doing that velocity when it hits you, it'll be like near fatal. You know, think about it that way.
Not.
Yeah, well, it'll be near fatal, as in like, you know, depends where it hits you. But I mean, if something's moving at 150 plus miles an hour, which would be like 250, 300 kilometers an hour, and it hits you, then it's gonna do some serious damage.
The thing is, like, they'll build houses that on sort of like I don't want to say stilts because that's not the right word, but that you get this sort of picture. They're elevated homes.
Yeah.
And you get wind that goes underneath them, and that sort of mitigates it somewhat. But I think more recently they've gone to brick homes because it's pretty hard to blow over.
There's a lot of brick at the moment in Florida that I've seen going up when I've been there.
And they probably have filled the Besser blocks with like steel Rio bars, so that some builders will do that. They'll just like chuck a shitload of cement and Rio bars down the Besser blocks when often the Besser blocks will be hollow, and they'll only do a cement pillar every so often. But I mean, you're going to struggle to knock down a brick home. What is more likely to happen is that the roof will come off, and then once the roof comes off, then you're basically, if you don't have a mattress,
you're exposed.
And you've got lights, you've got bits of whatever's in your home is just going to be flying around. So you basically just got to wait out an 8-hour storm underneath the mattress, which would be horrendous. And because it's like Florida and it's the middle of summer or at the end of summer.
Well, end of summer, yeah, but
it'll still be warm and muggy, so you're going to be sweating your ass off. Yeah. It's not going to be pleasant.
No.
Normally cyclones are like a Cat 2. It's just like you can go outside for bits and like watch what's happening, but you can essentially just have candles on inside and have a few drinks and relax, and wait for it to blow over.
Yeah.
Category 3, even so, as soon as you start getting to Cat 4 and Cat 5, you've got to start having those procedures in place if it all starts going to shit.
Yeah, prayers. Yeah.
Pray for pray for that eye.
Pray for a quick death. Cat 4, they were saying it's about 100. We're still saying about 130 miles an hour kind of winds, which is still huge.
I've seen some videos of like Pacific Islands where I mean, it's horrible, but you'll see people climb palm trees when the storm surge comes over, and the whole island just gets covered in a wave, and then you've just got people up in trees basically hanging on for dear life. I'm just going like, your options are limited. You either go up or go down,
or you go sideways.
And but I mean, that's it is what it is. But that'd be the scariest thing for me is the storm surge, like, because that's if it's on a king tide, which is a couple of meters, then that whole tide is just going to come inland for kilometers and just basically destroy anything in its path.
Yeah, man. Where do you put your car?
Well, if you want to save your car, then you drive somewhere where
Yeah.
the storm surge is not going to hit.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like it's just everything's just going to get ruined. You got to get right out of Dodge if you want to.
Dude, and it's salt water too, so that's the other thing. It's not just water; it's salt water. So if that flooding sticks around and your car's sitting under salt water for a day, enjoy that rust.
Or even your home, like that will just be covered in salt water, and then it's going to bring in all the dirt with it and all the mud with it. So it's like someone came into your house and dumped a ton of earth and gravel, and then hosed everything down with salt water and then left, and it's like, what do you do with that?
So when's it going to cross land? When are they predicting it's going to cross land?
I'm not exactly sure, but they were saying it's going to be this weekend.
And it's so Florida. So you've got Miami and Orlando. They're both Florida, aren't they?
Yeah, Orlando's mid-state though, Midland and mid-state.
Florida's not that wide though, is it? So Florida's like kind of like Greece.
Yeah, well, it's like an L. Yeah, it's kind of like an L shape. So yeah, but Orlando's about halfway up and about halfway in.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not very wide and it's very flat. So they will get some if there's major storm surge and flooding, and I'm sure they'll get flooding there in Orlando as well. But they just won't get hit by a wave at least.
So when are they? Where do they think it's going to hit? Or where is it predicted?
I was watching the video today, and they were saying it's all over the shop. They just don't know. They don't know. I mean, it's one of those things they literally don't know until it actually pretty much does it. Or at least a couple of hours before it actually does it. They were still projecting like it could go all the way up the East Coast, or it could hit Florida head on, or they were even projecting it could hit inside and go towards Texas.
Because I remember Cyclone Larry, which was on the northeast coast of Australia, and I remember watching the tracking maps. I don't know if they've got that on the American Bureau of Meteorology or whatever they call it.
Yeah, of course they will. Yeah.
But they have these sort of tracking maps, and you can sort of see where it's come and what strength it's going to be, and sort of predict where it's going to go. And I remember watching the tracking map, and it sort of got to a point, and there was like 3 major towns sort of within the predicted danger zone. Yeah, and that cyclone just kind of patrolled a little bit back and forth, and then just went bang, and just smashed straight into Innisfail and fucking wiped it out. And but it's just sort of like, everyone that lived in those towns would have just been going like, oh, it's coming this way, or it's going that way, like,
eeny, meeny, money, mo.
And that's the difference. That was the difference between, because they're all close enough that they all got hit by the cyclone. Yeah. But the difference was Innisfail and Mission Beach got hit with 300 to 350 kilometre-hour winds or whatever it was. And then the other towns got hit by 150 kilometre-hour winds. So it's... Yeah,
major difference. Well, that's it. Like, it just depends where it actually finally shakes out. But either way, it's kind of fortunate that there's the Caribbean islands, because, like I was saying, like it was hitting Category 5 strength when it was hitting the islands. So they're taking one for the team every time. So it loses all its power by the time it gets to the mainland.
So what are they saying? What's the advice from the sort of federal, the government? Are they saying get the shit out of there? Or
so this was interesting because I was watching this on YouTube, and all the conspiracy theorists were out in force saying,
"Oh, it's a false flag."
It's
the cyclone's a false flag.
How can it be cyclones?
Generated by those chemtrails?
How can there be cyclones if man-made climate change isn't real? Think about it. Yeah. So, they were all freaking out, and they were saying basically, don't listen to the government because they're just trying to harm you and your family. So that was easy, difficult to shout down on.
That is some next level irresponsibility. Like,
that is some irresponsible conspiracy theorism. Yeah. As opposed to responsible conspiracy theories.
Because a lot of that crackpot shit, it's just people in sort of weird corners of the internet, like InfoWars, just not so sort of weird corner, is it? It's sort of like pretty out there, but
a weird large swath of the internet.
yeah, giant following. That's giant mainstream-ish audience, but
it's good quality content.
But to sit there and go, that's kind of like saying, there's like a fire raging through the forest and these towns are going to get. They go, the fire's not real. If you see smoke, that's just the government pumping chemtrails into the air. Like, stay in your homes. don't evacuate.
Well, yeah, because you should have bought all your own gas masks,
Yeah.
obviously, from the survival store, and you'd be good to go with smoke. Wouldn't be a problem. But the government were basically saying, the government were kind of being a little bit cautious themselves, because they were saying to essentially not to evacuate, and they were saying like be aware of what's happening, keep up to date with the news, and be prepared to evacuate and stock up on provisions if you have to wait it out. But they were essentially saying don't do anything at this point. So my thinking is they were probably worried about, gridlock and traffic if everyone moved. So they were hoping that people stay put, and then they'll just evacuate those communities that they know to evacuate when it hits land. So.
Yeah, exactly. Because it could fizz. I mean, it's probably unlikely that it's going to fizz if it's that strong, but it could change course. It could do anything, and then you've just got people out of their homes unnecessarily. So. I agree with that. I think there's a point where, and they would.
Yeah, but it's the government.
And they wouldn't be just making it up on the spot.
Wouldn't they? It's the government. Do you trust them?
Well, maybe Trump's firing for the hit on this one. But I figure they would have learned from what was the last big one that.
I don't know. The last big hurricane that they got.
Yeah, was that one down in New Orleans.
Well, yeah, you're thinking of Katrina.
Yeah,
that was
New Orleans.
Yeah, that was New Orleans. That was years ago though, so I don't know if they've had one since then that was big.
I think Katrina was the last big one.
Well, Katrina was the last one that they also mishandled, so we kind of heard about it more. Whereas, I'm sure they've had other.
They mishandled it afterwards, didn't they?
Yeah, the relief effort. Yeah. They messed all that up, and it was all. This is under Bush, I believe, wasn't it? So it shows you how how old that was.
It would have been around. It would have been between 2003 and 2007.
Yeah, so this is back under Bush. So it's that old. So I'm sure they've had a big one since then. And in fact, I remember Obama having some issues around that as well, because I think there was one that he got into some trouble with, where again they had a hurricane, and he arguably did a better job than Bush, but sort of wasn't maybe particularly on point as they hoped he would be. And I remember there was a bit of a hoo-ha again.
Yeah, I guess the difference, if you say compare to Australia, is just the population size. So to evacuate a town of 40,000 people in Australia is a relatively easy exercise compared to evacuating a city of how much people in Miami? They'd be up 60 million. Not that much.
No, it won't be 60 million, but it'll be probably like a couple of million in the metro area.
Yeah, well, that's a way overestimation, wasn't it? So it's a country inside it.
Yeah, it'll be like a couple of million in the metro area, but then there'll be like in the wider area there'll be maybe another million or two as well. So it depends on with a hurricane. If you're going to evacuate one bunch, you're probably going to evacuate the other bunch as well. So you're talking good few million people. Yeah, it's huge. And the problem is that it's just on the tip there, right? So it's not to be horrible, like with Australia, like a lot of those kind of.
Yeah, you just have to. You basically, if you're on the east coast, you just have to turn the opposite direction and drive, and it's like you can just go wherever you want. But
whereas
essentially, you got to flee up the coast.
Yeah. And it's a lot of Florida's a populous state. It's not a Montana. It's a populous state as well. So there's people all the way up. So if everyone starts fleeing, then
all you're gonna end up is having families in cars when the storm surge comes through.
Yeah, exactly.
Let alone the winds. And can you imagine that's where you would start to see the deaths. I think if you've got families in cars.
Yeah, like if a storm surge hit, people in cars, there'd be much bigger death toll. Interestingly, Mexico just had an earthquake. Big earthquake.
Yeah, it was like 10, was it?
Yeah, huge earthquake. But interestingly, only, and I'm not being callous, but only like 32 people died so far, which for a huge earthquake is nothing. Like there used to be tens of thousands of people dying in earthquakes. And
really? That much?
In history, I mean, yeah. Yeah, tens of thousands would die due to an earthquake.
Due to like landslides and stuff?
Yeah,
just from buildings collapsing?
Landslides, the buildings, the fires... just everything. Just poor medical services, some minor injuries turn fatal.
Yeah.
But it used to be like tens of thousands of people would die in an earthquake, and now, it's 32. So, in that sense, it's good that so few have died. But same thing with the storm surge, or a hurricane. The numbers have been going down. So nowadays, we'll be horrified if 10 or 20 people die. But then if a storm surge hits a whole bunch of people in cars, maybe 100 people would die, which again we'd be horrified by. It's actually not a lot, but we'd be horrified by it, and it's definitely avoidable deaths if you can avoid people getting caught out in the open.
The crazy thing about earthquakes is that, from what I understand, is you can't build to all types of earthquakes. So you've got your short wave earthquakes, which I don't know how to describe that how would we describe that in words. That's sort of showing. It's just like
high amplitude, high frequency, and short
quakes.
Duration.
Yeah, short duration. There you go. And then you have long duration ones. And so if you've got a building that's only a couple of stories high in a long wave earthquake or long duration frequency earthquake, it's just the building's just going to go with the earthquake. But if you've got a skyscraper, then that thing's just going to wobble and basically come down. Whereas a short duration earthquake, the little buildings are going to get shaken to shit, but the tall buildings will just absorb that through their structure. So it's interesting when you sort of hear engineers talk about building in cities with earthquakes, and it's like, well, it doesn't really matter. You just build big buildings. You have small buildings, and you just hope that you're in the right one when the earthquake hits. That's what it comes down to, which is sort of like when I was listening to another podcast, and they were just randomly talking about earthquakes, and one of the guys lived in a place where there was lots of earthquakes, and he said after some big earthquakes, he would just see some people just be like, that's it, selling the house, I'm out of here. One earthquake too many, and just people would just get to a point where they're just freaks out. There must be something about earthquakes that freaks the shit out of people, because I've also known someone from New Zealand who was in Christchurch during that earthquake, and that person was deaf, but if they had some hearing, but if they heard a bang or something shocked them, they would just be freaking the fuck out, because just hyper tuned to if an earth, because they were right in the middle of Christchurch when that shit happened, and that was they just basically destroyed the city pretty much. But it's just interesting that earthquakes must be terrifying to be in. If they're big,
it's the ground, it's the ground beneath your feet seeming to crumble away. Yeah. So I think it just has a very psychological impact on you, where you just literally don't trust the ground you're on anymore. So if it happens once and then twice, and then you pretty much, it's maybe almost like a phobia.
Yeah.
But it's a phobia of the ground. So you're just I want to get away from here.
I mean, because you don't really hear people in cyclone areas talking about that, and I have some experience of that, but people just sort of get nonchalant about them because you get so many cyclones that are.
But maybe that's it, because
that aren't that strong that you just sort of go, the big one's never going to hit.
Yeah,
the little ones are just storms, So you get the
there's almost like a desensitization to it. Whereas with the earthquakes, they're huge. The ones you notice are huge and then infrequent. So they have that. They almost emotionally scar you.
Yeah.
Maybe, I said, maybe almost give you a phobia or a complex.
It's interesting because I know there's I know in psychology there's areas of psychology that look at disasters and psychological effects.
Geographical psychology.
Yeah, it's almost as bad as aviation psychology.
Yeah, geographical sympathetic psychology with lesbian dance.
Yeah, lesbian dance theory. Yeah.
It's a sandwich course.
That's the that's the evidence-based intervention for treating earthquake PTSD. Is just to dance with lesbians.
I thought you were going to say heavy turned ankles due to excessive weight. PTSD.
Or heavy turned cankles.
I don't know, man.
Look, it's a watch and wait. What else can you say about it? I'm not too sure. We just have to watch and wait. Hopefully it decreases in severity. Hopefully people make smart decisions.
I hope my friend survives it.
Yeah.